Blackfish is the story of a killer whale who has spent his life in captivity at SeaWorld and is responsible for the death of 3 different individuals. This eye-opening documentary gives you an in-depth look at the life and mind of a killer. I'm Annamaria Chen, and today we have Blackfish director Gabriela Cowperthwaite to talk about her controversial film. So first and foremost, tell us why you decided to make a film about this particular topic.
I was very surprised and kind of stunned when I heard that a top SeaWorld trainer was killed by a killer whale. I didn't think that this type of thing happened, especially not at a place like SeaWorld. And I think, you know, I am also someone who used to take her kids to SeaWorld, so I don't come from animal activism. I knew very little about killer whales. I just wanted to understand what happened on that day, because it didn't seem to make sense. And the story kept changing. So as a documentarian, I started becoming interested in sort of investigating this topic.
So when you first entered into creating this film, had you already taken a side? Because when I watched the film, you know, I went into it knowing that the whale had killed 3 people, including his longtime trainer. But I sort of left feeling bad for the whale. So was there a particular message that you wanted to get across, or did you just want to let the story unfold?
It's interesting. I mean, I think because I wasn't coming from a particular side and didn't have an agenda, because I just didn't know enough about really any side to really come in with a point of view. I still was shocked by what I learned and what I have now come to understand has been going on at that park for 40 years. I felt I sort of owed it to audiences to have everything revealed to them like it was to me, very factually. Sort of a fact-driven narrative, so that you're kind of experiencing things and learning things without someone telling you how to feel or someone telling you what to think. You're really seeing the facts laid out before you. So that was very deliberate in terms of my, approach with making the film.
You let people come to their own conclusion.
Correct. I figured that if people were sort of armed with the truth, they could make the right decisions for themselves and their families. In the same way that I felt like I had the privilege of being able to just hear all different sides of it, read as much as possible, and really, I guess learn the story from coming from a place of complete ignorance.
So as you were researching and interviewing, what was the most shocking piece of footage or information that you uncovered?
I mean, I think the first one was that Tilikum had killed twice before. So I couldn't believe it. I read a story called Killer in the Pool by Tim Zimmerman, who writes for Outside Magazine. And, in that story, that was revealed to me. I also finally came to understand how whales got into marine parks in the first place. Had never thought about it. Had never even considered, how did whales even come to places like SeaWorld?
Right.
So I found out about the Penn Cove captures in the Pacific Northwest. That was very shocking. Yeah, I mean, one shocking thing after another. I think the fact that there's social strife in these pools, and that the whales are essentially fighting constantly and vying for dominance. And in the wild, that can happen, but the subdominant animal flees the scene and so the conflict subsides. And in captivity, nobody ever gets to leave, so they just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. So that was
very similar to jail, rival gangs.
Yeah, that's it. People have made that analogy. You keep seeing, this person who you have a problem with, and you're going to just continue vying for sort of hierarchical dominance or whatever. Who knows? But you're confronted with your worst enemy constantly, day after day.
So you were able to find some pretty controversial people to participate in this film. You have a guy who used to hunt baby orcas for SeaWorld, former SeaWorld trainers. Why do you think they were willing to take part in this project when, it could have made them look bad in the end?
Yeah, I think that, to be perfectly honest, I think that everybody in the film who speaks, about what they did or how they were somehow maybe complicit in some way. So, the man who actually used to hunt, capture whales for SeaWorld, or the former SeaWorld trainers who were there participating in these marine parks, they all, you just get the sense, and I think you get this from watching the film, that they are it's almost like a confessional. They need to sort of unload this information and just sort of say, here's what happened, because, you know, ostensibly they all had to leave. The former SeaWorld trainers eventually had to leave, right? They knew that what was going on at SeaWorld was not okay. They quit, but it was so hard for them to leave their whales behind. So the only way they can justify doing that is by being a voice for the whales and advocating for them, because it's very heartbreaking for some of them who felt that they had bonded with a whale, a particular whale in the park, to leave that whale and to know that maybe nobody's taking as good, you know, as good of care of that whale that they were taking when they were there. So it's a hard thing for them to come to terms with.
So you sort of touched on the fact that, you know, whales have a very highly developed emotional intelligence, and it's something that's really explored in depth in Blackfish. Why did you think that this was a crucial element to include in the storyline?
Oh, geez, I guess I think, you know, when I learned about the brain, so when I spoke to the neuroscientist and she said that the whale brain not only has, I mean, it has everything that our brain has, so it has all the lobes and so forth, but basically it has a part of the brain that we don't have. So it has everything that we have, and there's something that they have that's extended out, that's apparently a part of their emotional lives that, that we can't even identify because we've never seen it. To me, it just, I mean, it still gives me chills to think about it, you know? It's just, we're talking about an animal that is so evolved, intelligence-wise, we presume, that that I think it's hard to fathom that that's the animal we've chosen to put in a pool and make do tricks for us.
Right.
So
it really helped develop the empathy that we felt for the whales as you watch it, because it's not like, you know, sometimes when you think of animals, you think, well, they don't understand, they're our pets, but these whales know that they're away from their families and they're trapped. And
well, and the idea that you know, that if that part of the brain is indeed connected to their emotional lives, the idea that they could be, you know, separated from a calf and feel more potentially than what we might feel in that same circumstance is just, it's just sort of, it's very profoundly impactful.
So were you surprised by the reach that this film had? I mean, there's rumors that it influenced Pixar to change the ending of their Finding Nemo sequel, Finding Dory, due to what they saw in Blackfish.
You know, I actually think, and I really truly believe this, I actually think that I wasn't like, I was certainly not unearthing anything with this information. Activists have known this stuff. Marine biologists, scientists have known that a lot of this stuff has been going on for decades. However, I think putting it in, you know, this capsule, this documentary form, was fairly accessible to the general public. But for the most part, I think we all actually knew that this wasn't cool. Like, I think we actually, I call it the cringe factor for myself. You go to these parks and you sort of see these performing whales and you cringe, kind of like, you're like, oh, it's just not quite right. I know it's not right. And then you look around and everybody's smiling and you're like in the splash zone, and it's sort of like, I don't know, it's almost like being anesthetized. You know, you're there and you're subject to like thumping music and bright colors and, you know, candy and popcorn, and you just sort of sit through it. And so, and yet, I think deep down inside, we all sort of know this is completely not cool. And so I think Blackfish actually just sort of struck a nerve and told people what, in a factual way, in a truthful way, what they already knew anyway.
So now that you've had a time to reflect after completing Blackfish, what do you hope will be the future of marine parks like SeaWorld and whales that are currently in captivity?
We are, you know, folks sort of behind Blackfish are advocating for sea sanctuaries. So we would have to stop the captive breeding program in SeaWorld, which means, you know, no more artificial insemination, right, which is a sort of disturbing, you know, world that I didn't even go into in Blackfish, right? But that would need to stop, otherwise there are going to be whales in captivity forever. So that would need to stop. And then for the whales that are there, they can't be thrown back in the ocean. They're full of antibiotics, right? Their teeth are missing, right, from biting on, you know, their teeth are broken from biting on steel gates. And, you know, these are animals that don't know how to hunt anymore, presumably, so they can't chase their, you know, live fish. So retiring them to a sea sanctuary is, you know, putting them in the ocean where they are living out a dignified life in a sustainable way. The subject to the rhythms of the ocean. I mean, this is sort of, you know, you cordon off, basically sea sanctuaries where you cordon off part of an ocean cove and with a net, and you have this enormous space. So the whales are actually going to be able to be killer whales for the first time, potentially learn how to hunt, but you can actually monitor their health and keep them there kind of within distance from humans in case they need to be fed dead fish because they don't learn to hunt or whatnot.
Is there any hope for them to eventually be able to be released back into the wild, or it's not going to be able to happen?
There's some marine biologists and former SeaWorld trainers who say there are certain candidates who have their teeth intact, who exhibit some hunting behavior, and who could be candidates for that. Pretty much for all of them, that would need to be a step program. You know, they would need to at first be in a sea sanctuary just to be able to kind of ease their way into that. But folks say that there are suitable candidates for that.
So if you haven't had a chance to see the film yet, Blackfish will be on CNN this Thursday, October 24th at 9 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gabriela.
Thank you. Thank you very much.